Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing? Welcome back. I missed y'all so much last week. I just want to do a sound check, make sure we're okay on the sound. My internet has been a little iffy this morning, which is really weird because for like 2 months it's been really great. It might be the clouds moving through. I don't know. But just to make sure y'all can hear me okay. Hello, everybody. Trinita, I saw your good news. You're looking at your new place tomorrow. That is awesome. Hazel, I saw you had an awesome trip with awesome weather. That's awesome. Hello, everybody. Come on in. Thank you, Miss Mimsy, for moderating. Sherry, I see you're here, but you're also working, so you're just in the background. Thank you so much, though, for popping in. Hello, everybody. Y'all, in honor of Memorial Day this past weekend, we're making the Liberty 12-inch quilt block. It will finish at 12.5 by 12.5, but it is a 12-inch finished quilt block in our quilts. I'm really excited to work on this quilt block for you. There is a link. Mimsy has posted it in the live chat, but if you're watching on the replay, you can jump down to the description box. It's a one-page PDF. It prints off just like this. It'll tell you everything you need for this block. Now, because I'm using a blanket stitch to sew down my applique today, and that's a little bit of a more time-consuming stitch to do, I've already prepared 3 of the parts for this block. But I'm going to be doing the blanket stitch with you on one of the stars and maybe going over some tips for doing the blanket stitch with your applique. So even if you don't want to make this block, maybe stick around, or if you're watching on the replay, fast forward to when we start stitching. And especially if you've never done the blanket stitch before, or you're really new to applique, there might be something in today's video that you find helpful. Now, I want to show you just an example of what this quilt block might look like. Repeated as a quilt, that's pretty fantastic. I'll leave that on the screen for a second. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. It's so great to see y'all. I missed y'all last week. We were camping. We had predominantly awesome weather. There was 2 days of rain, but we just chilled out. Even with the rain, it was just nice to have some relaxing days. You ever find that you just need to unplug and get away? I didn't even bring my laptop, y'all. Didn't even bring my laptop. It is so great to see y'all. So before we get started today, I feel like we've only missed last week, but I have so much to tell you. So grab a pen and a notepad because I have a lot of different little announcements. Some really fun stuff coming up, and I want you to write these things down if you're interested. All right, so that's what the Liberty block would look like, repeated as a quilt. It's pretty fantastic, right? You'll see our chat topic on the screen. We're going to go back to the would you rather. Would you rather spend the night in a luxurious hotel room with all the amenities, or would you rather spend the night camping surrounded by pretty scenery? I'm the camping person, but it has to be, I have to have a bathroom and temperature control kind of camping. But I would spend the night camping. All right, so let me give you a few dates, y'all. This coming Sunday, I have a pattern release. It is not a free pattern. The pattern is going to be $5, but you get so much for $5. And let me show you what this quilt is going to look like. It's going to be called the Liberty Wall Sampler. If you haven't logged on to Facebook and seen this might be the first time you're seeing it. This quilt is going to measure 30 inches by 30 inches. It's like the perfect size to hang up on a wall, or to drape over the end of the bed, like sort of centered at the end of the bed. Oh, that would be gorgeous. 30 inches by 30 inches. This is going to be fantastic for those of you who are just starting out with simple patchwork and applique. It's called the Liberty Wall Sampler. It's going to be in the Etsy shop on Sunday. I'm working on videos for it. They won't be out before Sunday. I already know that. But I really feel confident that you can make this without the video tutorials, but I'm going to make them anyway, but they'll be out after the pattern comes out. And if you're on Patreon, this will be your free monthly pattern over on Patreon, okay? Isn't that pretty? I have all the gorgeous fabrics. Maybe at the end of today, when we're done with this block, I will show you the gorgeous fabrics I've picked out to make this quilt with. All right, and June 10th, which is next Thursday, we're coming live. And I want to ask y'all, now that a large majority of us have gone back to working during the day, how do y'all feel about moving to an evening live on Thursdays? What are your thoughts on that? Just throwing that out there. Switching from the day to an evening live on Thursdays. We're going to be making another quilt block next week. I don't know which one we're making yet, but I sort of have a Father's Day kind of theme for next week's block because we have Father's Day coming up. So stay tuned for that. Saturday, the 19th, we're having our Patreon monthly Zoom. We will be doing a mosaic workshop for that Zoom. So we'll have a Q&A and then, some hangout time, Q&A session, and then a mosaic project that we're going to be making together as a workshop. That starts at 8 p.m. Saturday the 19th. Oh, glory, I got more. Wednesday the 23rd at 8 p.m. we're doing another Patreon workshop, and we're going to be doing applique. And I'm going to go through different stitches for applique, different techniques for applique, and we're going to be doing that together on Wednesday the 23rd at 8 p.m. If you're on Creative Crew on Facebook, I posted in the announcement section 2 dates for doing sew-ins. So check the announcement section. I didn't write down the dates, but it is listed at the top of the page on Creative Crew on Facebook. So I hope to see y'all hopefully both those days or one of those days. And I have an update for the Christmas in July quilt. Y'all, I've been working on this. I'm going to give you the start date. We're going to be starting on July the 20th. We will be doing evening lives every evening for 12 days, making 12 different blocks. I am currently working on the patterns for those. You will have the patterns a couple weeks before we get started so you can source materials, get everything together in plenty of time to start that quilt project. It's going to be a free quilt project. We're meeting every evening. Yes. Yeah, start pulling red, green, white fabrics, maybe some silver and gold. But yeah, start pulling that stuff, seeing what you got. And, oh, it's going to be so cute. I already have the blocks picked out, but I'm working on all the measurements because I want to give you like a total amount of fabric you need and all of that fun stuff. Quite a bit of work to go into it. Ella said, how much is your Patreon membership? Ella, so I have 4 different tiers on Patreon. So there's the $5 tier, which is basically just supporting my channel, and you get your name in the credits and any post that I might put on there that's for all the tiers, right? And then there is a $10 tier that gets you access to the monthly Zooms and the workshops that we do. That also gives you a free pattern that is available to you monthly. And then there's a $25 tier. That tier is really geared towards crafting business minded individuals because we go over tips and tricks and strategies for Those of you who might want to take your hobby into a business. And then there's the $50 tier, which gets all those things. And then you also get like coaching from me. We do a one-on-one Zoom once a month, at least, sometimes more than that if more help is needed. And so those are the 4 different tiers. Hello, everybody. That was all the announcements. That was a lot, right? If you have questions about any of that stuff, stick around and hopefully I can answer all those questions. Yes, and if you're on Patreon and you're not sure how to work it or how to access anything on there, send me a message. Send me a message either through Facebook or Etsy, and I'll try to make sure that you're accessing all the features of Patreon. Okay? But there is a link in the description box. So if you're on Patreon, but you're not sure how to get to the page, just go in the description box and click on that link, and it'll bring you right there, and you can scroll through all the stuff. Hello, everybody. Okay, so we have a lot to do today. We're going to be making this Liberty quilt block. I'm going to switch the camera over. Cutting mat. There we go. Here's the one-page PDF. It has your tracing templates for the applique. Y'all, you can use freezer paper or your favorite fusible for applique. I am doing raw edge applique, so I've not turned the edges over. They do have a raw edge. And then the measurements for all the pieces. Y'all, this is going to be pretty simple piecing, right? We're basically putting together a 4-patch for today's block. So the pieces you need to cut are 6.5 by 6.5. Red and blue, right? So we have this. And I've already stitched 3 of these stars because I've used a blanket stitch. And the blanket stitch for me is a little bit time consuming because I really take my time going around the edges of the applique. But we are going to be doing this 1 star together. So I've already traced my star, just like this, and I'm using Heat and Bond Light. On the paper side, not the bumpy side, I've traced the star. I'm going to warm up my iron. And for the star fabric, I wanted to go more primitive with this block, so I didn't use white fabric. I've used this tea-stained muslin, which I think is gorgeous. It's one of my favorite go-to fabrics out there. If you haven't ever noticed, a lot of my stuff, I use tea-stained muslin. And yes, it's one of my favorites. So that's what I'm using for my star fabric. Whatever fabric you're using for the applique, you want to put the pretty side facing down, right? And we're going to fuse the star to the back side. Let my iron warm up a second. Amanda said, what is muslin? Muslin is cotton fabric. There's all different grades of muslin. If you go into, Amanda, if you go into like Joann Fabrics and you go into the quilting cotton section, right? Usually up against the wall or somewhere in that section, you'll find bolts and bolts of white, tea-stained, different varying whites, right? And that would be the muslin section. It is cotton, 100% cotton. It is not a cotton poly blend, but there's different grades of it. So you can pretty much tell by the price of it, right? The more pricier by the yard is the higher stitch count and the higher quality muslin. And usually like the lower priced ones, like $3.99, $4.99 a yard, hold it up to the light and see if you can see through it. It might be good for the project you're working on, or you might want to move over to a white quilter's cotton, like, oh, what are the brands? There's so many different ones out there. It just escaped my mind. But check out your muslins. And yeah, you might like them a lot. I saw a question about the blanket stitch. What is a blanket stitch? Flutter Bear, I'm going to be showing you the blanket stitch here in just a second, and I'll show you what it looks like on your sewing machine. Whoa, Kathleen picked up a bolt of the Pelon P44 for 18 bucks. That is awesome. Y'all remember a year ago we couldn't even find that stuff. Moda, thank you, Mimsy. Moda's a good one. Yes. All right, let me go ahead and fuse this star. I think my iron is plenty hot now. We're going to fuse the shape right onto the back side of our fabric. We're going to let that cool off for just a second, and then we're cutting this out right on the line. It was 70% off. Oh, 60%. Sounds like I need to do a trip to Joann's, right? Stock up while you can. Once it's cooled off, we're going to cut this shape out. Yeah. Alexis sent me a message today. There's a coupon for 50% off, but 60% off is awesome. We're just going through and cutting this out right on the line. Yeah, a year ago, you couldn't even find that stuff. And if you did find it, the price was ridiculous. Ridiculous. That was crazy. I'm just going through, cutting out this shape right on the line. Just like this. There we go. And then we can remove the paper backing, right? And you should see the shiny bits on the back of the star. That's your adhesive. That's your adhesive. I'm going to show you a really easy way to make sure you're putting this in the center of your pieces. I'm going to bring this over. I'm going to fold this square in half. And I'm just going to press that fold for just a second. And then I'm going to fold it the other way. And that's going to give us some lines we can center this star up with. Just like that. See that? Actually, you might not see it. I'm hoping with the darker fabric. Oh yeah, you can see that. The little creases that we just ironed on there. Now I'm going to take my star. I'm just going to fold it up and match up the two little points down here with the top there. And I'm just going to give that a finger press and make a little line right there. Now we can center that line up with the horizontal line, and the tip of the star we can center on the line that goes vertically, right? That'll help you get the perfect placement each and every time for each of your 4 blocks, and then you can fuse it right down. And that just takes a second, and we're going to let it cool off. Just let that cool off. All right, the blanket stitch. I'm going to draw it out for you because depending on the sewing machine, it might be a different number. You know, each of the stitches are assigned a number that you program in or you dial to. So it might be different, a different number on your machines. But it will have a little example of what the blanket stitch looks like. So you're going to want to look for a stitch that looks like this. And that would be your blanket stitch. It might even be called something else in your manual. But I refer to this stitch as a blanket stitch. So what it does is your machine starts with the needle right on the outside, right next to your applique, but it's actually lowered into the background fabric right next to the edge of your applique, right? So that's where we are. Your machine will take a stitch over and back, take a stitch over and back, take a stitch over and back. Now my machine, I have the Juki HZL F600, and I actually have like 7 or 8 different kinds of blanket stitches in my machine. The one I'm using today starts off and it takes a small stitch and then a stitch and back, and it's a locking stitch. It locks that in place, okay? And then it takes a stitch, stitch, over, back, stitch, stitch, over, back. So whatever blanket stitch you're using, I recommend that you grab yourself some scraps, right? This is just some leftover binding on a quilt that I finished up. And I keep these scraps next to my machine because each time that I go to do an applique project, I set my blanket stitch accordingly, or the zigzag stitch or the satin stitch, whatever stitch you're using. You want to test it out on some scraps before you actually start sewing on your project, right? So I just have some binding scraps next to my machine. You can see I started off here and adjusted it and went to here. And I know you probably can't see that very well, but it was kind of pulling in and puckering the fabric a little bit. So I adjusted the tension, and now the stitches are laying nice and flat and there's no puckering. So I do all of my adjustments on the scraps before I bring in my work, okay? I think Susan said it looks like the other stars are tilted on the squares, probably because the way that I have them turned, right? If you have them like that, they're all in the same position. But if you turn one accidentally like that, then they are tilted, which it would look really fantastic either way, right? Tilted or straight up, but there we go. I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm going to have to pay close attention when I sew these 4 pieces together if I want them all facing up. Facing up, facing up, facing up. There we go. All right, so that's the blanket stitch, but you know what? I say it's your quilt block. You use whatever kind of stitch you want. Now, I did say on the PDF, okay, so if you want to use a satin stitch or even a really dense zigzag stitch, I recommend putting some tearaway stabilizer underneath of your piece before you do the stitching. If not, it's very possible that you're going to draw up that background fabric because it's going to eat some of your fabric in a really dense stitch. You could put some phone book pages underneath. You could put some coffee filters. You could use some purchased tearaway stabilizer. You want something underneath of there, even a couple layers, if you're going to do a really dense stitch to stitch this down. Okay? Because I'm using a blanket stitch, it is not a very dense stitch, so I'm not using any kind of tearaway stabilizer underneath of my work. You can also, here's another thing, you can stitch them when they're individual pieces like this, or you could assemble the 4-patch as a quilt block and then do your stitching. It's totally up to you. I do find it easier to do it at this stage versus maneuvering the 12-inch quilt block in there, but that is totally up to you. Dari said, yes, thank you, Dari. She would put an arrow up there. I'm going to use one of these heat erasing pins. That is a good idea because I can see where I would get this mixed up. Thank you, Dari. There we go. That's a great idea. Karen said, who has phone book pages anymore? I have 4 phone books that my Nana gave me like 5 years ago. And she had been collecting them for years. So who knows how old these phone books are. But you're right. Who gets them anymore? So I don't use the pages because I'm like, well, what if I want to use them for a project and this is all I have? Coffee filters. Take a coffee filter and iron it nice and flat. That gives you a great working space for tearaway stabilizer. Trinita, if you want to do hearts instead of the stars, absolutely. Draw yourself a heart template and make hearts instead of stars. Okay. All right, we've gone over what the blanket stitch looks like on the sewing machine. I'm going to get ready to start stitching this one. I'm going to switch you over to the sewing machine. And here we are. I have my open toe foot on so that hopefully you can see a little bit better. You want to make sure you have a foot on that allows for your machine to move sideways without breaking your needle, right? If you're doing the blanket stitch or a zigzag stitch, make sure you use the right foot so that you don't break a needle when the machine goes from left to right. All right. Let's see. Ooh, where's my settings? Oh, where are they? Where are they? Here we go. Okay, so because I stitched the 3 pieces yesterday and I left this one here, I knew I would not remember the settings that I set this stitch to. So anytime you're doing an applique project and you're not going to finish it all at one sitting, write down all of the adjustments that you made to the width, to the length, and maybe even your tension so that you don't forget. Surely yesterday to today, I would have forgotten all of these. So I just write it down so I don't forget. I am setting my machine up to do what's really cool about the Juki is I have a blanket stitch that has different widths stitches. And so that's the one I'm using today. I'm going to set that up. Number 18. If you have a Juki HZL, I'm using stitch number 18 in the machine. For my tension, for my machine and the fabrics that I'm using, I lowered it to a -2. That gives me a very pretty stitch without it being too tight and drawing up this background fabric. And then the width I had at a 5.0 and the length was a 1.0. If I had not written all of this down, I surely would have forgotten since yesterday. All right, so here we go. My machine does a locking stitch when it first starts. So I could cut off this little tail that it's going to leave, but I'm going to show you a tip, what you want to do if your machine does not lock that stitch when you first get started. So I'm not going to trim this tail, okay? I'm going to show you how you can tie that off. We're going to lower the needle into the background fabric, but right next to the star. It also might be helpful, oh, it's slippery, if you starch your background fabrics before cutting them out. That's going to also add a little bit more stability when you're doing your stitches. I did not starch this blue fabric. I want to show you how it acts being unstarched. But if you want a prettier stitch with a little bit more control, you might want to starch your fabrics before getting started, okay? So my needle is in the background, right next to the star. We're going to get started. See how it took 3 little small stitches? That's actually the locking stitch. And now it's back over into the background. There's 1, 2, and now it goes over into the star and returns back. Then it's going to take 2 small stitches, 1, 2, and now it's going to go over into the star. 1, 2, into the star. 1, 2, into the star. Anytime you're turning this piece, you want to make sure that your needle is over into the background fabric and not the star fabric, right? I'm in the background fabric. I can move the piece around at that point. I'm in the background fabric and I need to turn this so that we're coming along this edge now. Approaching the first little tip here. In the background fabric. So we are sewing right next to that applique. When it does the traveling stitch, it is right next to the applique. Sometimes I might be on the applique by accident, and that's okay. But the goal is to have it right next to the applique and it almost becomes invisible, right? And I really like this stitch because it almost looks like it's hand done, right? Almost. On the straighter ways, I kind of speed up and go faster, but I really slow down and take my time on the little points of the star. And that's probably why you should be glad I've already done 3 ahead of time. Because I really just slow down and take my time. I put a little bit of music on and just enjoy the time at the sewing machine. in the background. We can turn this just a little bit. You can use a color thread that's going to blend in with your applique, or you can use a contrasting color that coordinates with your block overall, or just something that's going to really stand out. Coming into that inside curve. Coming around the tip of that star. Coming to the last inside curve. This is the last tip of the star. And we're almost at the beginning. All right, we're almost approaching the very beginning where we got started. Now I want to show you, my machine has a thread cutter right there. When I push that, it ties it off on the back and secures the ending, right? But let's pretend that this machine doesn't have the automatic thread cutter that ties off our work. And let's also pretend that it did not do a locking stitch when I first got started. A lot of machines don't have that. So we have the tail from when we first got started. Now I'm going to stitch down right to where we started. And I'm going to remove this piece from the sewing machine. I'm going to show you how to tie this off, okay? All right, I am just beyond the stitches where we started. I'm going to lift up my needle and pull this right away. We're pretending that there's no thread cutter, and we're snipping those threads. All right, let's go back to the cutting mat. Here we are. I know I've missed a lot of conversation, so if you've asked questions that are directed for me, if you can repeat them, I'm so sorry, but that would be awesome. And if you can type them in all caps, that would make it really easy for me to see. Trinita said, can we use white for the background? Trinita, it's your quilt block, my dear. Use whatever colors you want to. Use whatever shapes you want to. I'm just hoping, you know, if you don't want to make it exactly like this, just use this as inspiration and go from there, right? It's your quilt block. You do it whatever colors you want. Joan, the stitch that I'm using is the blanket stitch. Let's see, I drew it out here. It looks like this on your sewing machine. You could use a straight stitch, a zigzag, a satin, any of the decorative stitches in your machine. I just chose the blanket stitch for my particular pieces. Lisa said, would you use a matching thread for the stars? I have. My thread is just a tiny bit darker than the tea-stained muslin, just a shade darker. It's like a caramel color. So it kind of blends in, but you can see it. So you could match it to your applique, or you could match it to your background fabric, or use a totally different color. Karen, I've used the tea-stained muslin. So at Joann's, it's actually on a bolt, and on the side of the bolt, it'll say tea-stained muslin. I don't know that they actually stained it with tea, but it just looks like it. It just looks like it. So now we're pretending that this machine doesn't have a locking stitch, right? So there's a thread on the back, and there should be 2 threads up at the top. Our goal is to tie this off in a knot so that you don't see it, but it's going to secure these stitches so they don't come unraveled with use of your quilt or with washing, right? So I'm just going to find myself a needle. Let me get a needle that I can thread pretty easily. This is a big needle, but it has a big eye on it, which makes it easy to thread. We're going to thread the tails of these 2 pieces right into this needle. Like that. See if there's space to put this other one in there. Oh, can I see it? It might help if I trim the fuzzy part off the end. Fuzzy part off the end. There we go. We're going to put both of those thread tails right through there. Like that. And we're going to, right next to the applique, we're going to bring this needle and these thread tails to the back side of this block. So there we go. Now we have 3 thread tails on the back. Now we can secure and tie that into a knot. We don't have to worry about our stitches coming undone. And the knot's not going to show on the front. And we know everything is nice and secure. And I usually do like a triple knot just because I'm paranoid. So I just tie it into a knot like 3 times. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now we can trim this off. It doesn't have to be that long. So everything is nice and neat, secured on the back. And now we don't have to worry about all of our stitching coming undone. Right? All right, so Miss Dari gave me the tip to put the little arrows on there. That was awesome. Because now we can sew this 4 patch together. Just like that. Like that. Right? You could do them all with your stars up like that or offset like that, right? Whatever way you like it best. All right, so I have my machine set up for a blanket stitch. At this point, once you get all of your applique stitched down, you're going to want to change feed. I'm going to put the foot on for my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let me switch over for that. Switch over for that. There we go. And I need to switch from a blanket stitch to clear, go home. Dun, 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 dun. 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. And I like using a little leader, so I'm going to put that underneath. And I'm going to reset my tension because remember I had it lowered to a -2. I want to reset my tension. So make sure you switch all your stuff back over to a straight stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And at this point, y'all, it's a 4 patch. Super duper easy, right? We're going to turn it over. We're going to sew these 2 pieces together right there and there. And I'm not even going to press those seams. You might want to press them before continuing. But since we're going to be at the sewing machine, I'm going to finger press them. I like pressing my seams to the blue side so that I can nest the seam right in the middle. You might want to press your seams open if you want to, right? So we are set up for the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now we're just doing a simple 4 patch. So there's the first seam. Make sure all my arrows are going up the right way. The second seam, I'm going to take that off of the sewing machine. Cut these 2 pieces apart. You can open them up like this. They're going to be off the camera for just a second. Make sure all of our arrows are going up like that. And I'm going to flip the bottom section right onto the top. Just like that. We're going to start with this one last seam, matching up those raw edges. We're going to come about halfway down that first block. Again, you might want to pre-press these pieces, right? I'm going to put the seam on the bottom towards the blue, so that one goes that way. And this one comes towards me, the blue block, right? And you'll feel them catch right in the middle. And then we can just finish lining up these fabrics just like that. And there is our 4 patch. Now all we have left to do is press it. And we're done. So super simple, right? The most time-consuming part of this block is sewing down the applique. Right? I'm going to give this a press. Heat up my iron again because she's been sleeping. Let's see. Just like to get all my seams going in the right direction. There we go. I'll press from the back just to get them to start behaving a little bit. Like that. And then I'll press from the front. And this is when the little marks that I made with my heat erasing pen will go away. Thank you, Dari. Oh, she's going to be pretty. Look how pretty she is. There we go. Now, what's really awesome about this block, let's say you don't want to make a quilt out of it or put it into a quilt project. How pretty would this be just as a little wall hanging, right? Make up some of these. You could sell them in your Etsy shops. You could sell them at craft fairs. We've got 4th of July coming up. We just had Memorial Day. I think these kind of little small projects would do really well at like the crafting fairs, the farmers markets, stuff like that. Or you could make a bunch of them and put them into a quilt. I'm going to add this one right there onto the design wall. That's the last 5 blocks we've done together. So I'm going to add this one to those up there. But yeah, you could make a whole bunch of these and just make them individual little baby quilts, right? Hi, Connie. You're a little late. That's okay. You can come back on the replay. We've I'm so tongue-tied today. We've mainly focused on the blanket stitch, right? And I had already done 3 of the stars. So the majority of today's video was stitching the 1 blue star. And, but yeah, you can come back on the replay for everything you missed. In the very beginning, I went through a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up. So you don't want to miss that. Come back on the replay and at least jot down some dates of some stuff that's coming up. Oh, yeah, you could make this into a pillow. Oh, I love that idea. Yes, you could even make this into a tote, right? Yes. Yeah, you could make that into a tote. So that is the block. You can see it measures 12.5 by 12.5. In our quilts, it's a 12-inch quilt block. And if you just came in after we got started, this PDF is down in the description box. It's a free download, tells you the pieces, the measurements to cut, and gives you the tracing template, right? So don't leave without grabbing that. Karen said, where do you find the replays? New to your videos. Karen, thank you so much for stopping by. Okay, so let's say you're just getting on the internet and you come to YouTube. Type in the search bar, Lisa Capen Quilts. My channel is going to pop up and you can subscribe. And then you can hit the bell notification. You can set that to all, so you'll get notified when I come live. Hopefully it notifies you. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why. But so you'll get notified when I come live. You'll get notified when I post pictures, which is very rare on YouTube, but sometimes I do. And then you'll get notified when I upload pre-recorded videos. But once you go to my channel, you're going to see all the videos. And I've broken them down into playlists to try to sort of organize all of them because there's like 400 videos now, which is crazy. And it's all different kinds of topics. So here lately we've been doing quilt blocks. But I have like printing on fabric videos. I have mystery quilts. I have some sublimation videos. I have some jelly plate and journaling videos. All it's kind of random, but predominantly quilting kind of videos. Ah, Debbie, you were able to sew along with me live today? That's awesome. Hey, Debbie, how are you doing? Ooh, Margaret said this will give me a chance to use some of the stitches on my new Aria sewing machine. Ooh, yes. You could do a different stitch on each one of the stars, right? Really work out your machine, see what kind of stitches you have. Yeah, no matter what you do, save yourself some scraps. You know, we all have these little pieces of binding left over from doing a quilt, right? I just save them next to my machine. And I do decorative stitches a lot. So this comes in really handy for testing out your stitches before you even move over. I also cut them and use them as leaders and enders. This was a piece of a quilt binding. And so yeah, I save all the binding scraps. That goes next to the machine. Anitra said, Debbie came prepared. She did, didn't she? Margaret, I got this on Amazon. Yeah, I got, back in February, I got some birthday money, so I went on Amazon and I bought like 4 or 5 different quilting themed shirts. So this was on Amazon. Ah, Karen, you want to do photo quilts. Okay, so just, you know, throwing this out there. I have a video. It's earlier. Like my hair is different and everything. My editing skills were not that great. I'm working on it. So it's a longer video. But June Taylor Color Fast Sheets for photos on quilts. I have a video on that. And then I used my laser printer to print on fabric before. Then I got a color laser printer and I've printed on fabric. And more recently, I've gotten an Epson EcoTank printer, which I have converted into a sublimation printer. So you might want to check out all those different videos and see what method would work best for you. It's certainly possible with all the different kinds of printers. But yeah, check out some videos. Anitra, yes, I was in my little studio that Harlan made for me in the backyard in that video. My hair was a little bit longer. Yes. All right, y'all. So yeah, I actually really love this quilt block. I think it's fantastic. I love the more primitive colors. You know, it's not really bright, but I do think the bright red, white, and blue would look gorgeous too. I really do. I saw many of you were talking about Quilts of Valor. Yeah, I don't know if you could transition this into a Quilt of Valor quilt, but hopefully that has sparked some ideas. Sherry said, I love those older videos. Yeah, you better have a good hour on your hands if you want to watch one from beginning to the end. Because they were long. Oh, you're so welcome, Diana. You're so welcome. Yeah, so Sunday, if you're feeling patriotic, I have the great little wall quilt. It's called the Liberty Wall Sampler. That's going to be in my Etsy shop, y'all. If you missed at the very beginning, I'm going to pull that up on the screen so you can see what's coming up on Sunday. I am working on the videos, and I think, I'm going to make them really short videos. So like block 1 is the home block in the upper left corner. I'm going to do a real short video on it. And then the Liberty block. And then the patchwork red and white block next to it. And then the patchwork star. You know, so individual little videos. And I'm going to give you tips, ways to save time, ways to not stitch down applique if you're extremely new to applique. And instead of doing one video where we walk through the whole quilt, just short little things. Because some of you might be able to look at the instructions and say, oh, well, I don't need to know how to do the white and the red and white pieces, right? Because that's easy, but I want to know how to make the star patchwork. So you might just want to watch that one short video. Right? Sylvia, you're eating dinner. What's for dinner, Sylvia? Oh, Rhonda said, I would definitely rather go camping. Me too, Rhonda. Salad. Ooh, we had a good salad last night. Yep, so that's coming out on Sunday. There is a link to my Etsy shop down in the description box, so you can keep an eye out if you're interested in this pattern. But if you want to get in touch with me and you don't do Facebook, use that Etsy link and you can send me a message right through my Etsy shop. It's like a little messaging service, right? So if you're trying to get in touch with me, but you don't do Facebook, then jump over to Etsy and send me a message. You can send me pictures of what you're working on. That would be awesome. I would love to see whatever you're doing. And if you're on the creative crew and you've made this quilt block, I hope you post pictures. I want to see it. Anitra said, I want to camp out in Lisa's studio. Well, I'm so glad you weren't here yesterday, Anitra, because I tripped and fell. I'm a little sore today. But you ever fall down and you like look around to see if anyone saw you fall down? I fell in the parking lot one time on some ice, and I was not fortunate because there were people who saw me do it. At least yesterday. No one was in here to see that happen. But yes, I fell. I tripped and fell. It was not pretty. So I'm a little sore today. I'm a little sore. It could have been so much worse, though. It really could have been so much worse. I got lucky, but I'm sore. Yeah. My rib is the most sore. The funny thing is, that didn't hurt last night. My foot hurt, my knee hurt, my back hurt, my head hurt, and my arm hurt. But today, really, the most sore part of my body is my rib, which did not hurt last night. But, oh my glory, Sylvia said I fell in snow and broke my back. No one was around. Oh my gosh. Sylvia, that must have been scary. I know, right, Sheila? Because no one heard me downstairs. I'm in a room over the garage. So no one was down in the garage, when it happened. I'm sure that there was a noise from that. I felt like a tree. It was solid. But no one was in the garage when I fell, so no one in the house heard it. Right, Sherry? Yes. Yeah, so in my space, and I'm not sure why it's like this. I have no idea. So you see the floor. You see the floor? It's this high through 3/4 of my studio, and then there's a little step down. into a small, like, quarter section of the room. I don't know why it's a different height floor. I don't know why. But it's the same white carpet throughout everything, so it just camouflaged. And I was taking a quilt off the quilting frame, and I was folding it up as I was walking to go set it down, and my foot caught that ledge. I took like too fast, try to catch up with myself, and then just let it go. It was imminent that I was falling down, so I just went down. But yeah, that's the first time that I've tripped on that ledge. Tessa, you can't get it to print out, but you can draw it. The dimensions of the star. Let's measure it for you. Let's measure it for you. If you can't get it to print, maybe I can email it to you. You can contact me on Facebook or through Etsy. Send me your email address. Because sometimes people have a hard time printing through Google document sharing. But let's measure the star just so we know. It is 4 7/8 wide, right? From tip to tip sideways. 4 7/8. Almost 5 inches. You could make it 5 inches. And then from the top to the bottom, let's see, about 4.5. But if you send me an email or a message with your email address, I could email it to you, because it might be easier to print it out that way. Sheila, that's a good idea. Beanie 0718. I couldn't find the pattern in your Etsy. If you're looking for this one, it's down in the description box, right? For the Liberty Quilt Block. But if you're looking for the Liberty Wall Sampler, that one hasn't been posted in Etsy. It's actually coming out on Sunday. Sunday morning is when this one will be. It's already there, but it's not being released until Sunday. So let's go over it, right? Because there's 3 pages of instructions. I break down the patchwork star for you. You got all the measurements of all the pieces. And then how to piece the pieces together in the order that it all comes together. And then you have mirror imaged tracing templates for each one of the applique blocks. So they've already been mirror imaged. If you're using a fusible like Wonder Under, Heat and Bond, you're ready to trace. If you're using freezer paper, you're going to want to trace from the back side, right? There's Liberty. The star was big, so you have to cut one side and tape that together to get the full-size star, right? And then the Hope block, the block with the 3 stars, and then the firecrackers. But, so you not only get the tracing templates, if you have a cutting machine, you get the cutting files too. So you could send all the applique over to your cutting machine and have the machine cut it for you, which is how I'm going to do it. Especially the words, right? Because I have a hard time fussy cutting accurately. So I'm going to at least send the words over to the cutting machine. But not impossible. They're fairly good sized letters to cut out, but you get the cutting files for it too. Beanie, yes, this pattern is $5. $5. The one we did today is free. You don't have to pay anything for that. Dari, nope, it comes out Sunday. But Dari, you're a Patreon. So Sunday, check Patreon. Okay? Anitra said, Anitra, you're so funny. You've had me laughing since this morning. I have been like cracking up all by myself in my studio reading your messages over on Etsy. Y'all, it's been a lot of fun hanging out. I really missed y'all last week. I'm going to have to go through and read all the live chat because I know I've missed a lot of conversation. I know I've probably missed some questions, and I'm so sorry about that. I've missed your responses to the Would You Rather questions. But in the very beginning, I asked about transitioning from going live during the day at 12 noon to an evening live. Because I know we have more and more people going back to work outside the home now. And an evening live might be better suited for everybody. I don't know. So I threw that out there. Yes. I do know that when we do the lives every single day for 12 days for the Christmas in July, those will be evening lives. They will be evening lives, which might be fantastic if you're on the West Coast. Yes, Christmas in July, starting July the 20th. I'm so excited about that. I am in Virginia. Williamsburg area. So between Virginia Beach and Richmond, right there in the middle. What time in the evening? I'm thinking, Mimsy, like 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is usually a good evening time for me. But yeah, like Teresa said, you can always catch the replay. Yes. Debbie, yeah, I want to see your picture when you're done with your block. Absolutely. Hi, Chrissy. Tammy said yes to evening lives. Okay, Tammy. Sheila kind of wants the best of both worlds, right? She wants the cozy cabin and a scenic location. That sounds wonderful. Yes. Yes. Karen, you're moving to Smithfield. You're just like a hop, skip, and a jump across the James River Bridge. You're not that far. I'm near Busch Gardens. Chrissy said, spending the night camping with beautiful. Me too, Chrissy. Me too. Ooh, Dari said she did this block only smaller to turn it into mug rugs. That's a fantastic idea. Yes. Ooh, Rhonda said her son, wife, and new baby are in Centerville. That's not that far. I mean, it's a little drive, but not that far. Wanda said yes to evening lives for her too. Okay, so maybe we'll transition into an evening live. Next week, I know we are doing a quilt block. It will be a 12-inch quilt block to add up to these that are on the wall behind me. I don't know which block we're doing. I don't know if we'll do a traditional quilt block, but I kind of have in mind something for Father's Day. We tend to leave out the dads a lot, right? I don't know that we've done a Father's Day block. We didn't do one last year, I don't think. During the quarantine and the shutdown, I know we did a Mother's Day block. Yeah, maybe something suited for Father's Day, something fun to add up to the wall behind me. But either way, at least a day or two before next Thursday, I will put on my channel the thumbnail, and you can set the reminder. You can grab the pattern if you want to get that before we go live, and then you can see what time we're going live next Thursday. Right? But I do think we'll transition into evening. Ah, Karen said, do you have plans to visit Jamestown? I'm just like, right there's Jamestown, right here I am. Yep. That's kind of my neighborhood. Kind of like in between Yorktown and Jamestown, actually. All right, everybody. I hope you make this block. I want to see pictures. Post your pictures. I would love to see them. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. I hope you do something creative. I hope you do something relaxing. Yes, I'm going to go recover and take some Motrin. But, yes. Oh, Tuesday's your surgery, Wanda. Okay, I hadn't heard the update of when you're having it. All right, we're praying for you. I think you're going to feel so much better once you have that fixed. And you're going to do fine. Oh, Tuesday. All right, keep us updated, Miss Wanda. Yes, I'm glad you got to chat too. Me too. All right, everybody, have a blessed week. I'll see y'all next Thursday if I don't see you on Facebook before then. Bye, everybody.